The Simpsons used to be one of my favorite shows, and dare I say, maybe among the greatest television shows ever produced. I mean, it's garbage now, but there are 31 seasons already, and some incredibly talented and well-educated writers have been part of their alumni. Considering how many episodes were created, and how intelligent the writing staff was, it would only make sense that they would foresee, both intentionally and unintentionally, some real-world events. And people have noticed. It's become a meme that the Simpsons are prophets able to predict the future. There's nothing mystical about it. It really doesn't take a Nostradamus to predict the future. People like Orwell are praised for their insight into the future, but in reality he was just extrapolating the things that were already taking place in his present era and running with it. Observations seem like prophecies to dumb shits that don't know anything. So I'd like to think most people would recognize that the predictions of The Simpsons, despite many being quite accurate, are mostly coincidental. But most people are fucking retarded. And there's actually a plethora of people who believe that Matt Groening is a time traveler or part of the Illuminati or some shit. I'm not sure if he's being facetious, but take for example this popular video by Pat McAfee.
If something happens one time, anomaly. Happens 2 times, it's like, oh, okay, maybe. But whenever there's a trend of 18 plus, 20 plus things being predicted, you got to go like, hey, Groening, the gig's up. We know. You're a time traveler.
Just tell us.
Bro, I just want to talk to you. I got so many questions. Siegfried and Roy tiger attack. Do you remember that?
Of course.
Do you remember back in the day how tight Siegfried and Roy were with their tigers? It was like every main story was like, oh, these tigers are the best behaved animals on earth, blah, blah, blah. Simpsons in 1993 said the tiger is going to turn. This little friendly tiger is going to become an enemy of Siegfried and Roy quickly, and it's going to happen. 2003, it actually happened.
Well, I'll give them this one. They did predict this, but so did everybody. Anytime Siegfried and Roy were brought up, the same 2 jokes always came up. Wouldn't it be funny if they got mauled by their own tiger and, haha, they're gay? Because it was the homophobic 90s, and in countless movies and shows, being gay was the punchline. But seriously, everybody saw that coming, and as far as predictions go, that's pretty low-hanging fruit.
Autocorrect errors, 1994. Before you could even play Snake on the gray little box phone, they predicted that autocorrect will happen on your phone. Are you kidding me? Didn't happen until 2007.
No, I've actually heard this one spun 2 ways. That they predicted autocorrect and that they predicted smartphones. Neither of which are true, though. What they are using in the episode is a PDA, which were new at the time in 1994. PDAs were first announced in 1992, so the geek writers would have been more than aware of them by 1994, as was the general public. I mean, think about it. The joke wouldn't land if it was a future product that didn't exist yet and no one had heard of. Secondly, I think it's a coincidence that it appears to be mocking autocorrect, when in reality, I think the joke was that the tech at the time was faulty and that it misinterpreted what you wrote entirely. It's not the same thing as autocorrect, because it wasn't trying to correct the text. It flat out misread it. Also, spell checkers, which are the precursor to autocorrect, have been around since the late 70s.
FaceTime, 1995, not even a thought. I don't even know if anybody knew what the fuck the internet was.
Oh, that's
that little mark with the A and then the ring around it?
At?
See, that's what I said.
Mm-hmm. No,
what is internet anyway?
In 1995, they said, don't worry, you'll be carrying around a device where you will be face-to-face with somebody on the opposite side of Earth. 1995, they said that. 2010, it happened.
Now, this guy ought to be old enough to know that video phones existed long before FaceTime. And that's clearly what they're using in the episode. It's a video phone. It still has the fucking rotary dialer on it. The first closed-circuit video phone was actually developed in Germany back in like 1936. And the first transcontinental video call happened April 20th, 1964. The idea never gained much traction in the real world, but has always been a very popular concept in science fiction. So this wasn't a prediction by The Simpsons, it was an already existing futurist reference.
Faulty voter machines. 2008, they predicted it. 2012, it became the forefront of conversation in a big, big way. I assume these voter machines have been up in question for a long, long time, but they just knew that it was going to come to fruition in 2012.
No, I want to vote for Obama.
2 votes for McCain.
Come on, it's time for a change.
3 votes for McCain.
This is another one like the Siegfried and Roy prediction. Sure, it was accurate, but everybody made this exact same joke when voting machines were first introduced. We all knew it was bound to happen at some point. So I'll agree they did predict it, but so did everybody else.
The God particle. Now, this is the big one. Ty Schmidt did research. He said the God particle is the absolute reason why he is 1,000% a time traveler. Homer Simpson got up there like fucking Matt Damon in that movie where they have that
Good Will Hunting.
Good Will Hunting, and draws up this equation for what the God particle is, what is the God particle?
Yeah, it's basically this equation that essentially like explains how the universe was created.
And they did that in 1998, and the exact equation happens in 2012.
That's unheard of.
14 years ahead of time. They got Homer Simpson up there looking like that goddamn janitor from Harvard, solving equations up on a chalkboard. And 14 years later, it's like, yeah, that's actually how the universe was founded. It's like, wait a fucking minute, little comedy writer with the goddamn yellow cartoon, bro. That's insane.
Well, this one is quite substantial. However, I would argue that it was never actually a prediction. You see, back then we hadn't discovered the Higgs boson, but we did know it, or something like it, existed as part of field theory. It was first postulated in the 60s by theoretical physicist Peter Higgs. It was well known, but at the time unsubstantiated. It could only be predicted mathematically until it could be created and observed in the CERN Hadron Collider much later. So anyone versed in mathematics and physics could take a stab at the equation. And it just so happens that some of the writers on the staff at the time were brilliant in both. So is solving an equation a prediction? I say it's more like solving a puzzle. Solving the puzzle isn't the same thing as predicting the answer. And I feel I should also point out that the mathematical equation Homer has on that board doesn't actually predict the Higgs boson. It just predicted its mass. And to quote Dr. Simon Singh, Homer almost predicted the mass of the elementary particle. So the final number is actually a little larger than the actual nanomass of the God particle. So it wasn't entirely accurate either.
The NSA spying scandal. Everybody knew that the Patriot Act was like in existence, but nobody had a clue that NSA literally knows everything about you. Every dick you've sent has been seen by some government agency, but it wasn't always like that. We didn't know that everything was getting spied on, Sean. Nobody knew that.
I didn't know.
They predicted that in 2007, 2013 it happened.
No, Lisa, it's not like the government is listening to everybody's conversation.
Actually, the idea that government organizations are spying on the public is a rather old conspiracy theory. I'm not sure, but I think even Ted Kaczynski mentions it in his manifesto somewhere. The theory ramped up in popularity after 9/11, so I'm not sure if this was a prediction so much as just using an already established conspiracy as a gag.
Smartwatches, 1995 they said it would happen, 2014 they came to fruition.
Well, to me, that looks more like a Star Trek tricorder on a wristband than an Apple Watch. And secondly, the concept of a communication device in a watch is old as fuck. And get smart, Maxwell had a phone in his shoe. In James Bond, he had all sorts of gadgets in his watch.
America's Ebola outbreak, 1997 they said it, 2014. Do you remember when Ebola hit? It was literally
Hospitals like shutting down.
Oh, they had people wearing like hazmat suits, carrying people around because they were scared Ebola was possible. In the modern world, this was happening. Years and years and years and years ago, Matt Groening said this is going to happen.
Ebola has been around for a long time, and it was often used as a joke because of the reputation it had. The movie Outbreak came out in 1995, so everyone was very much aware of the Ebola virus at the time. Now look at the clip again. Nowhere in it do they predict that Ebola is coming to America. It just mentions that Ebola exists and that Curious George has it. Which is the joke. The movie Outbreak was about monkeys spreading Ebola. So you really gotta reach to try and claim that this is in any way a prediction of anything.
Greece's debt default, 2012 they called it, 2015 it happened. So many countries out there, by the way.
They picked Greece.
The exact country to happen.
Well, yeah, to someone who doesn't know anything, it would seem like they just chose a random country and it was correct. But in reality, anybody who was aware of the economic situation in Greece could have predicted that. It's like predicting that the guy who lost his job and can't pay his rent will eventually be evicted. That's just simple cause and effect.
Trump's presidency, 2000 they called it, 2016 it came to fruition. The Simpsons called this President Trump out there, and everybody probably looked at, oh, those Simpsons guys are so funny. Bang, 16 years later, it is about to happen. It goes down.
Now, part of this is true, but part of it is also flat-out misinformation. And if you spent even 2 seconds vetting his info, he'd know it. That clip of Trump going down the escalator is not from the year 2000, as the clip dubiously claims. It is in fact from a short promotional clip entitled Trumptastic Voyage that came out July 7th, 2015, several weeks after Trump's infamous escalator descent. Now, The Simpsons did mention Trump as president in the episode Bart of the Future back in the year 2000. It was a flash-forward episode in which Lisa's president, Milhouse, mentions that she inherited a budget crunch from Mr. Trump. It's a hell of a coincidence, but it's just that, a coincidence. They chose Trump because he is the personification of the self-absorbed American business magnate, and he had mentioned an interest in getting into politics prior to 1999. And at the time, the idea of electing him president of the United States was a laughable notion.
Lady Gaga Super Bowl halftime show, 2012. They called it 2017. I mean, I think we all knew that she was born this way. She would probably get the halftime show at some point, but to the details that they had. These are not coincidences. Coincidenci. I don't know how you pronounce it.
How the fuck do they know this stuff?
He's
it's got to be time travel.
Matt Groening is a time travel. I have so many fucking questions.
Well, to be fair, Lady Gaga was in the episode. So not only could she have given them some inside input into the type of show she might do later on, it's entirely possible that life is imitating art, and that she retroactively used the content of the episode to inspire her Super Bowl performance. I don't know for sure, but what I do know is that there's a mountain of rational explanations that are all better than time travel.
9/11. They called that happening. If you do recall planes going into buildings, they said it in 1997, 2001 it happened.
Yeah, this is the big one everyone brings up. Pat says planes going into the buildings, but there's no sign of that anywhere in the episode. So that part wasn't predicted at all. All you can claim is that they predicted the date 9/11. But even that is a bit of a stretch. It's $9 and the New York skyline. Perhaps you kids these days don't remember, but prior to 9/11, the World Trade Towers were an iconic part of the New York skyline, perhaps second only to the Empire State Building. It's fun to come up with these post hoc connections, but this is another thing that can easily be dismissed as coincidence.
The Syrian Uprising, everything that's going on in the Middle East has all been talked about on The Simpsons.
Oh, conflict in the Middle East? Certainly nobody could have predicted that. Like, seriously, conflict in the Middle East isn't a prediction, it's an observation that's been true for centuries. And he sort of glossed over the details. But an Egyptian news anchor claimed that the flag on the side of the truck in the clip is that of the Syrian opposition, and that the Simpsons creators were part of a conspiracy to start the Arab Spring, because the Syrian opposition flag didn't exist at the time the episode aired. The problem with that is that it did exist and has existed since 1963. People like Pat McAfee just believe the first thing they hear from sources that are clearly not fucking credible. Now, I'm fairly certain American espionage did play a role in starting the Arab Spring, but why the hell would Matt Groening be involved, and why the hell would he be dropping hints in a cartoon? Dropping hints isn't the kind of thing that real-world villains do. It's what cartoon villains do. Only in a Bond film would the bad guy give you a chance to know and stop his plan.
There's another alleged prediction that Pat McAfee neglected to mention, and that's the episode in which people claim The Simpsons forecasted the winner of the 2016 Nobel Prize in 2010. But as you can see, they actually predicted that Jagdish Bhagwati would win, not Bengt Holmstrom, so they weren't correct at all. They just happened to have the name of the actual winner somewhere on the page among many other equally likely candidates. People who are familiar with this sort of academia would be aware of who would likely be a contender for the Nobel Prize in each category. So this would be like writing down a list of the best football teams in America, and then claiming you predicted the winner of the Super Bowl if any one of them wins.
And then he created another show called Futurama. That is huge. He created another show like, yeah, listen, here's me rubbing it in the face that's where I could go if I have to. I have so many questions for Matt Groening, and guess what, Matt Groening? The gig's up. We know. I'm all in on you, Matt. And I'm a fan, by the way, aren't we? We're big fans.
I'm a huge fan.
If you want to travel to future me or current me or past me and say what's up, I think we would all be appreciated.
I really hope he's being facetious.